I want to introduce Inas Mustafa and Zinab Mohammed, and they graciously agreed to be the first one to present their project and the results of their project. And this is a very good way to start this series, this research series. So I thank you very much for willing to go in and do this first session. So I'll let you take it away. I don't know who wants to start, Inas or Zinab, or you could both chime in together. So any way you want to do it.
Inas will start.
I'll start.
Okay, very good.
Start
by the
now?
way, oh, I'm sorry. Everyone should mute themselves, okay? And then by all means, if you want to interject a question, just unmute yourself, and that questions are welcome. Okay, Inas, you're on.
Hello everyone, I am Ines Amin. I'm MERETI trainee. Zinab and I are very delighted to share the results of our research with you. We'd like to thank Professor Henry for giving us such an opportunity. We also would like to thank Professor Nahid and Professor Henry for their support during the research and their invaluable input in such research. We hope that the results of our research could contribute in enhancing the ethical conduct of research in Egypt in the near future. I'll start with a brief background and the methodology, and then Zainab will proceed to cover the results and the conclusion. Okay. Our research was about the awareness, perceptions, and attitudes towards research ethics among undergraduates and postgraduates from two Egyptian medical schools, Suez Canal and Bani Suef medical schools. As you all know, that medical research can have a great impact on health improvement, and to accomplish such improvement, researchers have to increase the conduct of research, and this also occurs in developing countries, including Egypt. The more we conduct the research, the more we need to learn about research ethics. As regards to medical students, they are already engaged in research involving human participants during undergraduate studies, so we can consider research ethics a core competency for all medical students. Despite that, research ethics are rarely discussed in the undergraduate medical curriculum. Accordingly, to obtain a needs assessment regarding research ethics training, our objectives included assessing the awareness of undergraduates and postgraduates regarding research ethics concepts, and assessing their perceptions and attitudes towards certain research ethics issues. Our study was a cross-sectional survey involving a convenience sample, snowball, at two Egyptian medical schools, Suez Canal and Bani Suef. The study participants included undergraduates and postgraduates from both settings. We meant by undergraduates all medical students from the first to the sixth medical study year, and postgraduates, master students, doctoral or PhD students, lecturers, assistant professors, and professors. Two major groups, undergraduates and postgraduates. We used a self-administered survey, either distributed in person or sending the link of the Google form through email or social media. The survey included 5 main domains. The first domain was the basic demographic characteristics, including age, gender, position, prior research experience, and prior training in research ethics. The second domain was the awareness about different aspects of research ethics. We asked the participants how much they are familiar with certain research ethics concepts. We used a 4-point scale from 1 to 4, where 1 was unfamiliar, totally unfamiliar, and 2 slightly familiar, 3 moderately familiar, and 4 very familiar. Examples for the concepts we asked them about the guidelines governing research ethics: informed consent, risks and benefits, vulnerability, confidentiality, responsible conduct of research, and research ethics committees. The third domain was the perceptions and attitudes about research ethics committees. We asked the participants to state whether they agree or disagree to certain statements about research ethics committees and to state the degree of their agreement or disagreement. We used a 5-point Likert scale where 1 is strongly disagree, 2 disagreement, 3 not sure, and 4 agree, 5 strongly agree. Examples of the statements we used: ethical review of research is only necessary for international collaborative research. Ethical review of research by a research ethics committee would delay research and make it harder for the researcher. The role of REC is to get financial benefit from reviewing the research. Conducting research involving human subjects without prior approval from a research ethics committee is accepted. The fourth domain.
Enos, go to the previous slide. So what was the scale you used for perceptions?
We used a Likert scale.
But a 5-point?
5-point.
Okay, and which one of these examples is a perception and which ones are attitudes?
For perception, it's the way of thinking. So I think that the first three
The first
are
3
perceptions.
are perceptions?
Yeah. And the last is the attitude, the reaction based on the perception.
Okay. What if? Well, well, let me put this on the table. What about number 1? Is that a perception or an attitude? What do you think?
I think it is the perception. They think that it's the way of thinking about research ethics committee as it is only for international collaboration. Their perception towards that statement. Okay,
all right, I could buy that. All right. Though it's it could actually also, I mean, it could be, I'm just thinking that it's more of an attitude. It's on one hand, one could say, well, it appears that the way things are done, we only get ethics review for international research, or it could be an attitude in the sense that it's not necessary to get ethics review unless it's an international research. You see what I'm trying to say?
It goes both directions.
Yeah, yeah. Though I must admit, I'm thinking that it's more of an attitude. Without belaboring the point I'm trying to make is that perception is how I see the way things are done. Okay, without any assignment of opinion or value. Okay, now number two could also be an attitude. My attitude is that getting the REC involved delays research. Though one could also say, well, it just appears that what happens in the world, how I see the world. Well, I see the world as ethics committee delays research. So it could go both ways, though. Well, it could go both ways. I think for the, depending on the context, it could be perception. I definitely agree with you that number 4 is an attitude, is acceptable. Okay. All right. Very good. Excellent.
Proceed.
Yes, please.
The fourth domain was about the attitudes about certain research practices. We also asked the participants to state whether they agree or disagree to the statement and the degree of their agreement or disagreement. We also used a 5-point Likert scale. Some examples of the statements. It is the investigator's choice to decide whether to keep the research data confidential or not. Children and the mentally ill could provide their own informed consent. It is acceptable to fabricate data provided that there is no risk to the research participants. Use of one's own previous research in another research without referring to that is not considered plagiarism. The fifth domain was the attitudes regarding incorporating a research ethics course into the undergraduate curriculum. We asked the participants whether they agree or disagree to the implementation of such a course and the degree of their agreement or disagreement using the 5-point Likert scale. We asked them to determine items to be included in the course. We gave them some examples. We asked them about the preferred time of studying, whether during the academic years of study or the clinical years of study. We asked about preferred instructional method for studying, whether online, workshops, seminars, or lectures. And if there is a course, whether they prefer it should be mandatory or elective. These were the 5 domains of the survey. We used descriptive statistics, and mainly we assessed the percentage distribution of variables. For our ethical considerations, we got the approval from both RECs of both settings, South Canal and Pennsylvania Medical Schools. Confidentiality was enhanced by waiving the documentation of signatures of informed consent and keeping the survey anonymous. A detailed information sheet was at the beginning of the survey, including the purpose of the research, the potential risks and benefits, ensuring that participation is voluntary and anonymous, and ensuring that they have the right to refuse participation or to withdraw without any reason and without any negative consequences and at any time. These are a brief idea about the background and the methodology, and Zainab will proceed to cover the results and conclusion. Thank you.
All right, very good. Nice, nice presentation. Thank you.
Yes, thanks.
Thank you, Dorinas, for your nice presentation. And I will now present the results of this study. I thank you for the respectable for the attendance, for their respectful attendance. I just want to be sure that I share my screen to the all. You are now seeing my screen?
No.
No, Zainab, no, we see you.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, but we rather see the screen.
Okay, thank you. I think now everybody sees the screen.
You want to maximize it?
Maximize it.
Make it into slide view.
Okay.
Presentation view.
Okay.
You got to click on that on the right-hand corner, lower right-hand corner.
Okay, thank you. I lost the screen myself.
I mean, we see the screen. You know how you maximize it. Slide
And
view.
how to, yes, I see.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Very good. Okay. All right.
Regarding the results of this study, we surveyed a total of 725 participants from the two targeted medical schools, Bani Suef University and Suez Canal University. The distribution of the participant as the following. We received responses from postgraduates and undergraduates. From postgraduates, we received like 317 participants, and from undergraduates, we received like 408 participants. Those who have previous research experience were about 29.4%, taking research training in the form of courses, training or workshop, etc. Regarding the forest domain, which is awareness about different aspects of research, this table demonstrated the results of some selected questions. For example, we see that 47% of undergraduates said that they are not at all or slightly familiar with the guidelines that govern research ethics. In comparison to 34% of the postgraduates who said that they are not familiar at all or slightly familiar with these guidelines. Regarding the basic elements of the informed consent, about 43% of undergraduates said that they are unfamiliar with the basic elements of research, and about 22.3% of the postgraduates were unfamiliar with the elements of the informed consent. Regarding plagiarism, more than half of the undergraduates said that they are unfamiliar at all with the concept of plagiarism or the term plagiarism, and about 1/4 of postgraduates are unfamiliar with plagiarism. We're trying to
Zainab going, so were those differences statistically significant?
Yes, we did the chi-square test to see if there is a statistical significance between these two groups regarding each concept. And we find that regarding all these three concepts, there is a highly significance, like the p-value is 0.001 or 0.000.
Okay, very good, excellent, great.
Thank you. We also try to assess the level of overall awareness among both undergraduates and postgraduates. To calculate this point, we calculate the overall level of awareness by adding up the scores of all questions together. It was 17 questions used to assess awareness. We adding up the scores of all questions together and then dividing the total score into 3 categories. And divided these categories into 3 categories. Those who gained a percent less than 50% were considered unfamiliar, and those who gained a percent between 50 to 75% were considered moderately familiar with the research ethics concepts that we used, that we assessed in our questionnaire. And those who gained more than 70% were considered to some extent have a good familiarity with these concepts. And we found that most of undergraduates and postgraduates are in the middle category, whose scores were between 50 and 75%. Regarding the second domain, which is perceptions and attitude about research ethics committee, this table demonstrates the results we gained. We asked certain statements regarding the statement whether ethical review of research is only necessary for international collaborative research. Like 27% of undergraduates were unsure if ethical review is necessary for international collaborative research, and about 20% were agree or strongly agree that ethical review is just only necessary for international collaborative research. Comparing to postgraduate, 23% were not sure if this is necessary only for international research, and 13% strongly agrees that ethical review is just for international collaborative research. Regarding the statement, the role of Research Ethics Committee is to get financial benefit from reviewing the research. We also find that like 1/3 of the undergraduates aren't sure if the review is just for financial benefits, and like 22% agree with this statement. For postgraduate, 29% aren't sure, and the similar percent like undergraduates, 20% from postgraduates also agrees that the role of research ethics is to get financial benefits from reviewing the research. Regarding this statement, the last statement, conducting research involving human subject without conducting research involving human subjects without prior approval from a research ethics committee is acceptable. We found that like 29% of the undergraduates weren't unsure if this is required or not, and like 28% agree that conducting research involving human subject without prior approval is acceptable. Also, regarding postgraduates, 1/4 of postgraduates think that research involving human subject without prior approval is acceptable, and like 18% strongly agree that also this is acceptable to do research without approval from the Research Ethics Committee. Regarding the domains about attitudes about certain research practices, also this table showed the attitudes about certain research practices. We find that we asked certain statements. The first statement is, it is the investigator's choice to decide whether to keep the research data confidential or not. And we find like 1/3 of undergraduates aren't sure, and 27 agree that it is the investigator's choice to determine the confidentiality. And regarding the postgraduate, 22% aren't sure, and like 20% or 19% think that this is the investigator's choice. We also have a statement about the vulnerable group. We asked if vulnerable groups like children and the mentally ill could provide their own informed consent. Undergraduates aren't sure if children and the mentally ill are able. Like 23% think they aren't sure, and larger percent, 29% say agreed that mentally ill could provide their own informed consent, and children could provide their informed consent. We have a slightly lower percent in the postgraduate group, like 18% think that they are not sure about this statement. They are not sure about if this statement is true or not. Also, 18% think that agree or strongly agree that they could obtain informed consent from children and mentally ill persons. Also, we have access and statement about fabrication of data. We ask them if it is acceptable to fabricate data, providing there is no risk happen to the research participants. Like 1/4 of the undergraduates weren't sure, and 24% agreed to that statement. And in the postgraduates, 14% weren't unsure, and 15% agreed to these statements.
So, I'm sorry. Again, was there significant differences between undergraduates and postgraduates?
Regarding this table?
Any of the statements. I mean, just looking 40%, 57, 46, 63, 50,
yes,
69. Were there any?
Actually, I'm not sure about this table per se. I didn't have the full data in front of me. But overall, there was a significant difference between postgraduates and undergraduates regarding their attitudes toward research ethics practices.
Now, what do you mean by that? Overall, their attitudes. Wait, say that again. Overall, there was a significant difference between what?
Okay, we're trying to calculate the attitude score. We transformed the Likert scale into categorical scales, and we compare the positive and the negative attitudes toward such research practices between undergraduates and postgraduates, and we gain that postgraduates have positive attitudes towards research ethics rather than undergraduates.
Okay, now, were all your attitude questions framed in a negative way?
Okay, we take in consideration that the highest score to be the positive attitude, and the lowest score will be the lowest score will be towards the negative attitude.
Okay, so that's good. So my question is, well, how many attitude questions did you have?
We have like 11 attitude questions.
Okay, and were they all framed in the same way? Meaning that, like, I see these three questions here, they're all framed with, if I could say, with a negative point of view, right?
Yes, I see. But we just taking we didn't take it in consideration during preparing the questionnaire from the start. But in the analysis, we were aware with these points, like the answer of these questions. The positive attitude will take the highest score, and the negative attitude will take the lowest score. It could be managed via statistical software.
Well, I mean, all you have to do is, like, if one question was framed in a positive way, then all you have to do is, when you're adding up the scores, you reverse it.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
Exactly, yes.
Okay, all right. So without belaboring the statistics, so you're saying overall the postgraduates had an attitude that was more congruent with acceptable norms?
Yes.
Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Even though it seemed like their awareness was a little bit off.
The awareness, we did like, we calculate the total score regarding the awareness. This figure that I just showed a few slides.
Right.
But,
who had a better awareness?
Both in the average.
Both groups are in the middle category.
I see. Okay. All right. Very good. Excellent. All right.
Prof, I have a question, please. Just a question.
Don't ask me the question.
Okay. Zainab, yes, I have a question. So for
sure.
the unders, they were in which year?
Undergraduates.
First to sixth.
Summer, you're asking me about the class of the undergraduates, right?
Yes, exactly.
Thank you for your questions. We targeted most undergraduates from year 1 to year 6 to be in the undergraduates category.
What do you think about?
I expect this to the class, so when they get older, maybe they are more aware. So I want you to adjust for the class. And also, I think for the postgraduates, the academics are more knowledgeable about the research compared to the clinic, the specialties.
Yes,
I
thank
think
you, Summer. Yes, I see. Ines and I was thinking about doing like subcategories for the undergraduates and postgraduates to separate the faculty from the master and PhD students, because
you could do it easily by Zainab, you could do it easily by regression model. So you could adjust for that by regression model. You don't have to do subcategorical analysis. you could adjust for this by regression model, but consider this in your analysis.
Thank you, Summer. We also thinking about the regression model to detect the variables which is significantly could affect the overall model. We think about it, but actually we didn't do it statistically till the moment.
Okay. It's just my opinion, so just I'm trying to.
No, that's a good idea. I think that should be done. I agree.
I have a question, please.
I have a question too. Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
You first. No, you first.
Somebody asked the question already, will you?
Okay. I just want to know why did you categorize the knowledge into middle group and higher group and lower group? I couldn't get the point of.
Okay. Thank you, Asma, for your questions. Actually, we added up the score of each questions, and the awareness group we have 17 questions, and the response to each question is on a Likert scale from 1 to 5. Okay.
Okay. I just want to.
Yes, we use Likert categorical Likert scale. We deal with it as a numerical scale.
No. Why didn't you put a cutoff point of the knowledge above and below?
Actually, we take 2 cutoff points. In our scale, these 70 questions, if you are very aware with all aspects of research ethics, the maximum score a person will get is 85, okay? And the least percent a person will get is 17. Does it make a sense?
For me, as I know, I think knowledge could be easier to be understandable if there's one cutoff point and there is yes or no. Above this cutoff point or not.
That's
it would give more sense of the data.
Now, I would like to make a point that there's a difference between awareness and knowledge.
Okay.
So are we talking about knowledge or awareness?
She's asking about awareness, I believe, not knowledge.
Right, yeah, so not knowledge. So now I see your point, Asma, and in fact—
Can you give the slide, please, Zainab?
Yes, sure.
Thank you. Yes, Professor, I'm hearing you.
Yeah, so I think it when in the survey we're doing for biobanks, for perceptions, actually we only have a 3-point scale. Yes, no, I don't know.
Yes.
Which is actually, similar to what Inas and Zinab used. You collapse the agrees and the disagrees, so you wind up having a 3-point scale. So, so what scale are you suggesting, Asma?
I believe 60% below or less, just cutoff point of 60%.
Now, help me understand that. What do you mean 60% above?
I mean that less than 60% is not aware, more than 60% are aware. And the numbers will be more obvious, will be more, will give more meaning.
Well, what do you ask the participants? What kind of scale?
This is the final result of a scale, and the people who get 60% of the questions right will be in this group, and people who get 60% less.
Okay, you're talking about this slide, less than 50.
Yes.
Oh, I see what you mean. Gotcha. Well, this way it's a little bit more granular.
There is another way to classify or to categorize the data. If
quartiles, maybe.
No, it's in this case it will not be quartiles. It will be tertiles. So Zainab, you could consider tertiles instead of less than 50, from 50 to 75, and more, because you want to categorize them into 3 groups. So I would recommend you to try elaborate on the data using the tertiles.
Tertiles. Thank you, Summer.
You using the what?
Tertiles.
Tertiles.
For what?
So the first 1/3 of the data, the second 2/3, and tertiles.
Why? What's the norm? I mean, why in thirds? Why is that better than this?
Yes.
Because she wants to classify them into 3 groups.
Right.
No, but meaning group meaningfully. I think.
What do you?
Yani, I think below 30% is the same as below 60%. You know.
No, you
so
could
what's the
consider it low, moderate, and high, for example.
But below 30 is مش عارف. I don't feel it's.
So,
I don't. I'm not familiar with this in awareness scale.
It's not by feeling.
Sure. No. I didn't see it before in any research. I don't know.
Give me.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about feelings here. Okay.
Yes. So we need to put the data into meaningful way to classify it. So if she wants to classify them into categories, like Asma suggests, I would consider the mean as the cutoff point, or the median if your data is not normally distributed. And this is what I'm thinking, because usually scores are not normally distributed.
I agree with that.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I agree with that.
This way, I mean, it is based on feelings. So more than 75% versus more than 67%. It's somewhat subjective. So I do agree just calculating a mean or a medium.
She could test the sensitivity of these different ways to classify them to find the best way to classify the data. So we have some statistical techniques in which you could find the best way to categorize the data using a cutoff point. So Zainab, you could consider this also.
Okay, all right, good points. Why don't you all take that offline and decide which is the best way to analyze that. Okay, very good, excellent.
Okay.
All right.
I have another question, but I think will be after after the doctor who are waiting for me. So I'll ask after him, so he can ask Dr. Amr after Dr. Amr.
No, you answered my question through your answer, so I'm okay.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I have another question, if I can.
Sure, Asma, go on.
Thank you. Why did you take a snowball sample?
Why did we take a snowball sample, not randomized sample, right?
Or even convenient sample, يعني ماشي, yes. Random sample, why not?
Actually, there is a negativity in the responses to the surveys. We're trying to use a randomized simple random sample. We tried to do it at first, but we faced a lot of difficulties. So what was available to us is to distribute the questionnaire online or to the classes, okay? Also, we think to take a class from each, or to take a group from each class for the undergraduate students. But during the time of collection of data, we were about to the end of the semester, and the student attendance to the faculty wasn't that good that would enable us to take cluster sample or sample random sample.
But is this a real snowball sample or a convenient sample? Yani people get each, yani I answered the questionnaire for you, and I'll get my colleagues to answer for you, or just you ask some students or some postgraduate to answer the questions. I just didn't get.
We ask the students to answer the questions and to distribute it to their peers.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes, okay.
Okay, very good.
Type, last question, please.
Now,
Excuse me.
now let's,
Thank you.
Asma,
I'm sorry.
let's move on. Okay.
Okay. No, no, wallahi, it's in the
If
data.
we have time at the end.
Okay.
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 The last domain was about the attitudes of the participant toward this incorporating research essay courses in the undergraduate curriculum. We asked them whether research ethics course shouldn't be in the undergraduate curriculum. More than half of the undergraduates agree with the statement. They didn't like the research ethics course to be incorporated in the undergraduate curriculum, comparing to nearly 1/3 of the postgraduates who didn't like research ethics to be in the undergraduate curriculum. We also asked them whether we'd like this courses or curriculum to be a mandatory courses or an elective courses. For the undergraduates, 27% agreed to be mandatory, and for the postgraduates, 62% agreed to be mandatory. So we concluded from this study that respondents lacked awareness of important ethics concepts, and there is a negative perception about research ethics committee among both groups. We concluded that about half of the studied undergraduates and a significant minority of the postgraduate held unsociatic attitudes regarding the need to undergraduate research curriculums in the undergraduate curriculums. And also we concluded that there is a need for further discussions regarding the importance of ethics and research among both groups. And also there is also a need for educational initiatives for both undergraduates and postgraduates. And our survey, we think that our survey results will give insights in the development of such initiatives or starting such initiatives. Thank you.
All right, very good. Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Zainab, Ines, Zainab, that was a wonderful study, a wonderful presentation. Thank you very much. Now,
Thank you.
I have a question. Go back to the third slide from the end. You have to share your screen again.
Okay.
No, this one, third one from the end.
Okay.
Okay.
This one?
Let me see all the bullet points.
Okay.
Okay, okay, the first bullet point, lacked awareness. The second one, perception. Now, a perception, it doesn't have any value attached to the perception. It's how they perceive things are being done. Okay, and so I'm not sure if it's correct to say a negative perception.
Yes, I see.
Okay, maybe I'm not even sure if it's okay to say it's an incorrect perception, because depending on how things are done, it could be an accurate perception or an inaccurate perception. So, like one of your questions, I'm trying to remember one of your perception questions. I mean, without knowing.
Would you like to go to the perception questions?
Yeah. That may. You gave an example of perceptions. Okay, so yeah, so here, let's take the role of the REC is to get financial benefit. So if well, let me now let's take the first one. It's only necessary for international research. Well, if that's the way things are done.
No.
No, well, don't. Okay, well, okay, so in both universities, that's not the way things are done. So then
Yeah.
one could say it's not a negative perception, it's an inaccurate perception. Okay, that's the only point I want to make. Now, on that slide, the third one from the end, you had a bullet point about awareness, perception, but you didn't have any bullet point about attitudes.
Attitudes. Okay. We
Right.
add it. Sure. Okay.
And you know, in terms of predicting behavior, attitudes is the most important thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so well, you had attitudes about undergraduate
Curriculum.
research ethics curriculum, but you
Yeah.
didn't have attitudes about research ethics.
Yes, we missed this point.
Right, yeah, okay, right. And my only last question is, did you look for differences between the two universities?
No, actually, no.
We haven't done.
We're not sure of that would be necessary, like, but I think that we should try it statistically to find if there is a difference between one university from Upper Egypt and another university from Lower Egypt. Maybe there is a difference, but we didn't did it yet.
Okay, all right, I know you. Okay, very good. Other questions?
No, it's just a small comment.
Sure, Summer, your comments. Valuable.
All right,
I'm
small
sorry.
comment.
Yeah, Zainab, just in figures, in figure 2, as I remember, just could you go to this slide? Okay, I would suggest, my humble point of view, to present the data on this using the percent, not the frequency. No,
Excuse
figure
me.
2.
Figure
Figure 2.
two.
Figure 2.
Yes, I see.
So the bar chart.
Virtual.
Yes, this one.
Sorry, Summer, could you say it again, please? Because I didn't
No,
got it.
just to present the data on y-axis using the percentage, not the frequencies.
Percentage, not the frequencies.
Yes, yes.
I see, yes. This on the top of the bar, right? Yes, I see.
Okay.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you,
Good
Summer.
job.
Thank you.
Good job,
Thank you
Zainab.
very much, Summer, for your valuable input.
All right, good. Other
You-
questions?
Yes, dear Dr. Zainab, what is the cause of negative perception of REC for undergraduate, and there is no any interaction between undergraduate and REC? I can understand that in postgraduate, maybe they delayed during master or PhD thesis review, but why undergraduate had negative thoughts regarding REC?
It's, Hanny, it's called word of mouth.
Actually, Dr. Hani, I'm not sure why they may have a negative perception toward this research ethics committee. I think we may have some sort of qualitative research to explore that. But to the best of my knowledge, I think that undergraduates usually afraid submitting their proposals to research ethics committee. Maybe just a personal point of view, maybe they think that their proposals will be refused, or there is no need for reviewing something that is considered to be beneficial for the community. Actually, I'm not sure.
I know the answer. The answer is that the seniors told them it's going to delay research.
I think that May I answer this, Dr. Hani?
Yes.
I think
Yes,
that,
Dr.
undergraduate medical students in our university, in our faculty, when they do any research that involves human participants, they should have an approval. And they work as a group under the supervision of a doctor, a supervisor, and they proceed with the supervisor in every step the REC recommends. So some of them know that they have this negative perception, maybe for they didn't consider why we should submit to the REC, why they should do any modifications to our proposal. They have to be more aware of the REC and its functions to have a positive perception or attitude. I think this is the reason. Thanks for your question.
Okay, good. Did you, you had a slide about the percentage of ethics education, right?
29.4.
Right. So do you plan to do a an association analysis between like attitudes versus prior ethics training?
You mean if there's a significant difference between prior research experience and their attitudes, right?
Right, yes.
Okay, I think we miss all the association or the relations between the groups here. We didn't put any B values, but for this question, yes, those who take prior research training have good attitude or positive attitude rather than who didn't take any courses at all, or those who aren't aware about what is research ethics. And
okay, well, I think that's one of the major conclusions you could make.
yeah,
right?
Right, for sure.
Okay, all right, very good, excellent.
Zainab, may I have a comment, please?
Sure, Dr. Nahed.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your presentation. I
Thank
have
you
a
very
comment regarding the importance of prior research ethics course. And hence, I support the comparison between the two School of Medicine. To my knowledge, at Suez Canal University, as Ines said, all the research had been carried out by the undergrad are reviewed by the Research Ethics Committee, because some of these undergraduate research are published in or have an international publication. Another important point is that the undergrad at Suez Canal University have a course of research ethics. So it is important to correlate those having a course, a simplified course of the research ethics with their knowledge and attitude. But I prefer in publication not to mention the comparison between such university and the other university. As in our previous results, we mentioned that University A and University B to avoid any stigmatization for the universities. Thank you.
Yes, I see. Thank you, Dr. Nahed. Thank you. I got your point. Thank you very much.
Okay, other questions? Asma, you could ask your third question now.
I think you and Dr. Nahed raised it up. I was thinking about the comparison between two universities. That's all.
Okay.
Thank you. It's very, very nice work and great job. Thank you.
Okay, very good. I don't think we've had a study looking at undergraduates and postgraduates, so this is very good information. You have a large sample size, so this is wonderful work, excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so what you're trying to present this abstract at a conference. One day, hopefully, there will be another conference, face to face, inshallah. Right? Yeah. Right. Okay. So anyway, any other thoughts?
Thank you.
My only other thought is that, as I said in the beginning, I like to have such a research webinar every month. And so if anyone wants to volunteer a work they have done, that's fantastic. As important, if just like what we did in the summer training, people would present their ideas for a potential research project. And I will say in the last 3 years, a lot of people had very good ideas for research projects. And I certainly know with everyone's busy schedule, it's hard to implement the research study. So I like to have these webinars serving as a motivating I'm trying to think of the word. Well, as a source of motivation to present your work, what project you would like to do, get feedback, and also maybe get other people to join you. I know last summer there were quite a few people who are wanting to do their projects in groups, and I know last year's group you've been busy taking the online courses, and so I would like to motivate people to go out and finalize their projects. And this is a great venue to present your ideas, get feedback. We have a wonderful group online here today, 20 people. That's wonderful attendance. I'm really glad to see that. And so we like to, again, motivate people to do their projects. And once you do your project, I encourage people to present abstracts, and I would pay for the attendance to these conference. In the past 2 years, several people have taken advantage of that, have made presentations at various ethics conferences, and then the next step is develop and submit a manuscript. And for the projects, I will financially support the projects, $14,000 US and up, okay, in order to do the work and serve as an honorarium or a stipend for yourself personally. So I really like to do a strong push to get these research projects out. Okay. All right, good. Any other questions, comments?
I wish to compare the attitude of the undergrad and postgraduate regarding medical ethics to research ethics to see if there is a difference or the lack is in both in medical and research ethics.
And what are you thinking about?
maybe Faculty of Medicine focus more about medical ethics than research ethics for undergraduate. And maybe if we see that people believes more about medical ethics than research ethics, this give us more pressure to increase our focus regarding research ethics.
Well, I think that's a good idea. I think it may very well depend on whether a person is more clinical versus an investigator.
May I have a comment, please?
Sure.
Dr. Hani, nowadays the medical curriculum is competency-based. One of the important competency-based education is ethics, including both of bioethics and research ethics. So it is mandatory now for all the undergraduate students, according to the new system in Egypt, to study both of bioethics and the research ethics. And also it is mandatory for the undergraduate, either in the preclinical or the clinical phase, is to implement research. So both of them are mandatory now. This is a new system in Egypt. Thank you.
I have a comment, please.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
I wonder if it's better to, not the word better, it's okay to add to the evaluation of ethics perception for students, their view of the quality of the ethics education they receive. As far as I know, some universities have very strong curriculum, and others just give the students papers and tell them, read this, and then you will give you answers, and things go like this. So we need to know the quality of education, because this may affect their idea of the clinical ethics and the research ethics as well. And we need to know the knowledge, the take-home knowledge they received from these courses after they finished. Like, let's say they finished the course in the third year or fourth year or fifth year. After 1 year or 2 years, are they still using the knowledge, or they forgot everything because they just needed to get this course to finish their curriculum?
Well, those are good thoughts. Definitely the quality is important. And well, let me ask you, what determines quality of a course?
The quality of the course determines that if they, they can evaluate the actual course topics, and if they understand it, maybe we can ask questions about those topics. So we see if they really have the answer or not. Maybe they can evaluate the course. They tell us, did the course is good, is bad, did they get enough information, was it live course, or was it just distributed the paper? I mean, we get the real idea of this course.
Okay, well, those are good points. So essentially, how does one evaluate a course? Now, for sure, whether how they did on the final exam could be one way. Of course, if the course was taught in a very bad way, no one's going to learn. So that's where student satisfaction with the quality comes in. So my only point is that there's many different ways to assess the quality of the course, but I agree with you that courses obviously needs to be evaluated. So what is done in Egypt? Are courses evaluated by the clinical departments? How are courses evaluated in the universities in Egypt? Are they evaluated?
Sorry.
Okay, Dr. Nahid. Dr. Nahid.
To my knowledge, the course is evaluated in two ways. during preparation and every now and then by an external evaluator from another university. This external evaluator should have a good idea about the course preparation and the evaluation and the quality control. And also another aspect is as Professor Henry said, student results and the percentage of student satisfaction sheet is very important for knowing what's happening with this or that course.
Right, okay. How does an external evaluator evaluate the course?
Sorry, can you say it again?
Yeah, how does an external person evaluate the course?
Yeah.
I mean, how is that done? How does a person outside the university evaluates the course?
I give the experience in my university. During preparation of the course, for example, at Suez Canal University, it is reviewed by an external evaluator, for example, from Ain Shams University.
But how? How?
According to the checklist prepared by the quality assurance body in Egypt.
Oh, okay. So it's just I mean, this is important. Looking at a checklist, looking at the learning objectives, seeing whether the learning objectives are in alignment with the activities and the modes of assessment. So I certainly agree with that. So again, there's many different ways to evaluate the course, and I think you need all those different ways that goes in.
Sorry, Dr. Henry, there is another way which is called the internal auditing process. The internal auditing process, one of the auditor from the quality assurance at the faculty or at the university attend the course's activities, for example, as the classes to show how the process is carried out, and to evaluate the instructor whether it is interactive lecture or it is one way. So there is two ways of evaluation: the internal auditing and also the external evaluator.
Yeah, now that's a good idea too. Also, there is the concept of peer assessment, where another faculty person evaluates, sits in and evaluates the course as well. And of course, that is done in a respectful way. Okay, very good. Good idea. So I'm looking at the chat box, and I see an important idea about having a webinar to learn about preparing a survey, and I think that's a great idea. At the conference that was held in the first week in March, we actually had a session about writing questions, how to write good questions for a survey, which I think is very important because obviously there's a good way and a wrong way, in the sense that you could write a question and people could interpret two different things from the same question. So I like that idea very much, and yes, we should have a webinar about how to do an online survey, because I think doing these surveys, there's really two major types of studies: quantitative, involving surveys, and then qualitative with doing interviews or focus groups. And actually, I started this focus group study in my hospital, looking at, and if this is something that somebody wants to do as well, I'm doing a focus group discussion study involving the aspects of moral distress among nurses taking care of COVID patients. Okay, and I'm doing the focus group by Zoom. I have 2 to 4 people on Zoom, and I'm just getting wonderful discussions. And actually, I may never do a face-to-face focus group methodology again, because it is so much easier to arrange focus group meetings with Zoom, and the quality is just as good. So anyway, so there's interview studies and survey studies, and so yes, we'll hold a webinar on those aspects as well. Okay, all right, good. Anybody? Ishima, what's your question? I'm just looking at that.
Yeah, I would just want to know if we could audit these focus group that you're conducting, because actually I was thinking to do something about the COVID-19 and the the distribution of the limited resources. So can we join that?
What, that particular study, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh,
the focus group that you're doing, if you're still doing that.
Oh, yes. No, I'm in the middle of doing it. And the short answer is yes. And the long answer is absolutely yes.
Oh, thank you. That would be great. Thank you.
So why don't you just send me an email, and that goes for anybody else. I think it would be very interesting to share results between different cultures, between different between different countries. So that sounds like a wonderful idea, and if other people would like to do that as well, send me an email. And as I said before, you can't do it face to face, which is fine. You do it by Zoom, no problem. Much easier, much easier. Okay. And
okay, thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay. Any other ideas? I know it's getting past your bedtime, or maybe you guys stay up late, right? So
yeah,
you could sleep. So you could sleep during the day, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I know what you guys do. Okay. All right. Okay. This has been great. It's been great seeing everybody. Yes, right. If you have a research idea, just send it to me.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Very good. I'll formally end this meeting. I made a recording, so I'll post it on the MERETI network site. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Very good. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.